On the 2nd of September, 2023, a kilometer underground in the Turkish cave of Morca, a man starts vomiting blood. Between him and the surface lie 12 hours of technical climbing up sheer vertical shafts. A climb he can no longer make. There's no mobile signal down here, and there never could be. A kilometer of rock sits overhead. The strangest part of this story is who the casualty was. Mark Dickey, 40 years old, a cave rescue instructor, the man who taught other people how to pull victims out from exactly this kind of depth. Getting him to the surface will take almost 200 rescuers from 9 countries, controlled blasting inside solid rock, and 9 days. Dickey lives in Croton-on-Hudson, a small town in New York State, about an hour's drive from Manhattan. On paper, he's a cave explorer, but that's only half the job. Dickey heads the New Jersey Initial Response Team, a group that rescues people from caves and abandoned mines. He's an instructor with the National Cave Rescue Commission in the United States, which means he teaches other rescuers how to work underground. Behind him are years as a firefighter and service as a paramedic. On top of that, he serves as secretary of the medical committee of the European Cave Rescue Association, the organization that coordinates the response to underground accidents across the continent. His specialty is deep vertical systems. These are caves where you don't walk down sloping galleries. You drop through sheer shafts, one after another, for hundreds of meters. That takes rope technique, precise calculation of gear, and physical endurance stretched over many hours. Colleagues estimate that maybe 2,000 people in the world work at that level. Not 2 million, not 200,000. 2,000 on the entire planet. For years, Dickey explained one simple thing in his courses. A cave does not forgive a slow response. You can't carry a casualty out on a stretcher in 40 minutes the way you might in open country. Every meter of the climb has to be won by hand, through squeezes and shafts, by dozens of people working together. He walked his students through hall systems, through how a medic operates at depth, through the logistics of intermediate camps. He was also the one who explained why underground accidents aren't counted in minutes, but in days, and why a single national service usually can't handle a job like that alone. In September of 2023, all of it turned back on him. The man who wrote the procedures for cave evacuation became the one who had to be evacuated, and not from 200 meters, from a kilometer down. The setting is the Tassili Plateau in the Taurus Mountains, southern Turkey, Mersin province, not far from the coastal town of Anamur. Here, at roughly 1,950 meters above sea level, a hole opens up in the limestone, the entrance to Morca Cave. From outside, it's an unremarkable gap among rocks and thin grass. Inside is a system that drops almost 1,300 meters. Morca was found in 1996, and the Turkish caver Ender Usuloglu is credited as its discoverer. For a long time, nobody had any idea of its real size. Systematic work was begun by the Anatolian Speleology Group Association, ASPEG for short, and it moved slowly, one expedition at a time. In 2013, explorers reached the 120-meter mark. A year later, 447. By 2018, they had pushed down to 919. In 2019, an international team got to 1,210 meters and found waterfalls along the way. One of them 40 meters high, plus a large underground lake. Every breakthrough like that meant weeks of work, tons of rope rigged into place, and new camps underground. The system's final numbers today: a depth of 1,276 meters, with a total passage length of 5,714 meters. That makes it the 3rd deepest cave in Turkey. And it was that 3rd place that kept nagging at the explorers. The gap to the leaders was measured in the tens of meters, which meant somewhere down there, a continuation might still be waiting, one that would make Morca the deepest in the country. The 2023 expedition set out to find that continuation. Its makeup was international. Over the years, cavers from France, Bulgaria, Iran, Romania, Spain, New Zealand, Israel, Turkey, Ukraine, and the United States had all worked in Morca. That summer, a mixed team came back to the Taurus Mountains, and among them was Mark Dickey. Working underground in systems like this is less like a hike and more like a shift rotation. The expedition's job was mapping, move through the known passages, measure them, put them on the survey, and check side branches in the hope of finding a way further down. You can't do that by dropping in and coming back the same day. So, the team sets up an underground base camp. The Morca camp sat at a depth of about 1,000 meters. Getting there from the entrance takes roughly 12 hours of continuous technical work. That's not 12 hours of walking. It's a sequence of rope descents into vertical shafts, traverses over open space, climbs up walls, crawls through gaps where you have to shove your pack ahead of you. Every rope anchor you pass is its own operation with carabiners, and there are hundreds of those points along the route. Conditions down there are constant and unpleasant. The temperature is low, humidity sits at 100%. Part of the route runs through water, and everything is coated in mud. People sleep in tents pitched right in the galleries, cook on camp stoves, and have nowhere to dry anything. Communication is a problem all its own. At that depth, a radio or a phone becomes a useless piece of plastic. The signal simply doesn't pass through that much limestone. To talk to the surface, you either run a telephone cable through the entire cave or install a special low-frequency system. An ordinary expedition doesn't have either. Information travels upward at exactly the speed a person can climb. Which leads to the central rule: a serious accident at that depth isn't an ambulance call. It's a multi-day international operation. Cavers know this before they ever step inside, and they accept it as the price of admission. Working alongside Dickey on that team was Jessica Van Ord, his fiancée. She's a paramedic herself, and a cave rescuer herself, a detail that would prove decisive within days. It happens on the same day the story opened with, the 2nd of September, 2023. Dickey is hit by sudden abdominal pain, followed by dizziness, nausea, and cold sweat. By his own account, given to reporters later, his first thought was almost casual. No idea what's going on, but it'll probably pass. It didn't. Then came heavy vomiting of blood. That's a sign of gastrointestinal bleeding, internal blood loss. You can't stop with your hands and can't simply tough out. On the surface, a patient like that goes to hospital immediately. Underground, the nearest hospital is a day's climb away. According to Turkish officials and a number of published accounts, the attack caught him at roughly 1,120 meters, on a vertical section. One review of the operation says he was ascending at that moment, several dozen meters above the floor of a shaft. The exact figure varies between sources. Some outlets state 1,040 meters straight away, which is the depth of the camp. Dickey understands what's happening faster than an ordinary visitor would. He has medical training, and he's seen conditions like this as a paramedic, and he draws the one correct conclusion: get back to camp now, while there's still strength to move. His companions help him reach the underground base camp at the 1,040-meter mark. There, they lay him down and begin monitoring him. After that, everything comes down to arithmetic. Climbing out from that depth means hours of raw physical work on rope, hauling your entire body weight with your arms and legs through ascenders, the clamps used for climbing. A person losing blood is physically incapable of doing it. Not in an hour, not in a day. Mark Dickey is trapped a kilometer underground, and nobody on the surface knows it yet. In a situation like this, the only channel to the outside world is a living person who can climb out. Jessica Van Ord takes that job. She has to cover the entire route in reverse: the shafts, the squeezes, the flooded sections, hundreds of rebelays. Climbing out from a kilometer down takes many hours straight, and it has to be done at a steady pace, without a breakdown, because a second attempt costs a full day. She heads up knowing exactly what conditions she left behind below. Word of the emergency doesn't reach the surface until many hours later. That delay isn't anyone's mistake. That's simply the physics of underground systems. While the news travels upward at human speed, help below can't even begin to assemble. And then the mechanism kicks in, the one the caving community spent decades building its structures for. The Turkish Caving Federation and the expedition organizers at ASPEG raised the alarm. On the 2nd of September, the signal goes out to the European Cave Rescue Association, ECRA, the organization that links Europe's national cave rescue services and knows how to assemble combined teams from multiple countries. What follows is what the reports call mobilization. ECRA contacts services in several countries at once, calls up doctors, and picks people with experience transporting casualties at depth. And immediately there's a question that would take 10 minutes to solve on the surface, but becomes critical here. How do you get medication, intravenous fluids, and blood into the cave? Dickey himself would later admit that without those medications and without the fast response from Turkish authorities, the next few hours could easily have gone differently. By that point, he has been lying in the underground camp for nearly a full day, still losing blood. On the 3rd of September, a team from the Hungarian Cave Rescue Service heads into the cave. With them goes a doctor, Zsofia Zador. Her task is defined very narrowly: reach the patient and keep him from losing too much blood. The descent takes about 13 hours, according to one review of the operation. The doctor covers the same route as any expedition member: shafts, squeezes, water, mud. The difference is that traveling down with her are medications, fluids, and bags of blood that can't be dropped or torn open on the rock. Down below begins work. The underground camp was never set up for it all. The patient is put on intravenous drips, given drugs to protect the stomach lining, and administered agents to help his blood clot. Then comes a transfusion, carried out at 1,040 meters in a tent, surrounded by mud and cold. One detail from that scene captures the level of improvisation. Blood can't be given cold, and the temperature in the cave stays low around the clock, so they warm the bags on a camping gas stove. The exact figure drifts between sources. Some say 6 units of blood, others 4 liters. The meaning doesn't change either way. This is one of the first blood transfusions ever performed underground, and by expert assessment, the deepest and the largest by volume. The effect isn't immediate. For several days, the doctors keep watching the patient, because you can't move someone whose bleeding hasn't stopped. The situation freezes. Up top, they gather forces. Down below, they hold his condition steady. By the 7th of September, his readings have stabilized enough for the command post to seriously discuss moving him for the first time. From this point on, the question changes. Not, will he survive, but, will he survive the journey up? While the fight over his vital signs went on below, an entire camp was growing on the Tazeli Plateau. Around the unremarkable entrance to Morca appeared tents, generators, equipment depots, a medical station, a command post with communications, and a helicopter landing area. A mountain meadow at nearly 2,000 meters had turned into the base of an international operation. The exact head count is muddled. In the first days, news agencies cited around 150 rescuers. Later summaries speak of nearly 200 participants. The number that comes up most often is on the order of 190 people, of whom more than 150 were professional rescue specialists, the rest doctors, paramedics, and experienced cavers. The geography is described differently too, anywhere from 7 to 9 countries. Most lists repeat the same names: Turkey, Italy, Croatia, Hungary, Bulgaria, Poland, Romania, Ukraine, and the United States. Overall command was taken by ECRA, and this is where the structure that association had been building for years paid off. The route out was divided into 7 consecutive stages, each assigned to a separate national team. A team owns its section, knows it by heart, works independently between 2 intermediate camps, and hands the stretcher over to the next group at the boundary of its zone. That scheme solves the main problem of long operations. Nobody burns out trying to cover the whole kilometer. They also dealt with the thing that had failed them from day one: communications. Rescuers ran a telephone cable through the cave and added a wireless cave link system that sends short messages straight through the rock. For the first time in a week, the surface command post could learn in real time where the stretcher was and how the patient was doing. At the same time, they were solving the rotation problem. People on the route need food, water, dry clothes, and sleep. Bivouacs were set up underground. On the 8th of September, a recording comes up from underground. A short video shot in the underground camp is released by Turkey's Communications Directorate, and it instantly spreads across world news. In the footage, Dickey is sitting up, speaking to the camera. He says, "As you can see, I'm up, I'm alert, I'm talking." And then he adds the crucial part: he hasn't healed inside, so without serious help, he isn't getting out of here. In the same recording, he thanks the caving community and the Turkish authorities. That's where he says the line about how close to the edge he was when they came back to him with medication. To the audience, it looks like the story of a man holding on. For the operation, the recording means something far more concrete. The patient is sitting up, speaking coherently, aware of his surroundings. which means the blood he lost has been replaced enough to start talking about movement. You don't haul a stretcher carrying someone in critical condition up 70-meter shafts. Any stop halfway up a shaft becomes a dead end. By these days, the story has traveled far beyond Turkey. It's leading news in America, Europe, and Turkey, and camera crews are camped at the cave entrance. Dickey's family in New York is learning the news from the same broadcasts as everyone else. Publicity has its downside too. Some of the reports in those days contradict each other. Different outlets give different depths, different rescuer counts, different timelines. The command post, for its part, tries to speak carefully because nobody can offer a forecast. Meanwhile, down below, work is going on that the cameras never show. The cave is being prepared for something it was never meant for. There's a basic rule of underground evacuation that explains everything else. Where a caver squeezes through sideways, breathing out and twisting a shoulder, a stretcher carrying an immobilized person will not pass, which means the cave has to be rebuilt. Crews move along the route ahead of the stretcher, widening the tight spots. Some of it is done with hand tools, hammers, chisels, jackhammers. Where the rock won't give, they use controlled blasting with small charges, carefully so as not to bring down the ceiling or block the passage entirely. Bulgarian teams handle much of that work. The vertical sections call for a different solution. Haul systems go up on the shafts, arrangements of pulleys and ropes that let several people lift a weight they could never move directly. Some of the lifts are done by counterweight. A group of rescuers descends on a parallel rope, and their own body weight pulls the stretcher up. It looks simple as a diagram and demands flawless coordination in reality, because on the other end of the system hangs a living person. Over those same days, intermediate camps are set up along the route. They appear at the 700, 500, 300, and 180-meter marks. Each has warmth, food, a medical station, and a place to hand the stretcher off to a fresh crew. One number captures the scale of the work better than anything. On a single section of the route alone, they counted more than 70 rebelés. A rebelé is a point where the rope changes direction or is re-anchored, and you can't just slide through it. At every one of those points, the movement stops. The stretcher and its escorts have to be transferred across, and the safety line moved by hand. Minutes multiply by dozens, and dozens add up into hours. The rescuers were building a temporary road a kilometer long inside a cave, and they were building it while the patient waited below. At around 3:30 in the afternoon, local time on the 9th of September, the command post gives the order to begin. The Turkish Caving Federation announces it. Dickey is secured in the stretcher and packed against the cold. He'll spend several more days underground, and for someone who has lost a lot of blood, hypothermia is no less dangerous than the bleeding itself. The IV keeps running while he's in motion. A doctor stays beside him the whole time, literally a meter away, for the entire route. The first leg runs from the underground camp at 1,040 meters to the camp at 700. Around 90 people handle the transport, relieving each other stage by stage. In the narrow sections, the stretcher is passed hand to hand like a conveyor belt. On the shafts, the haul systems take over. Progress is measured in tens of meters per hour. People on the operation compared the distance covered to the height of 2 skyscrapers stacked one on top of the other. And that's the vertical alone, without counting the horizontal galleries. The work runs around the clock, because underground there's no difference between day and night. People sleep a few hours in the intermediate camps and go back on the route. The danger doesn't go anywhere in the meantime. During the operation, one of the rescuers was injured by a falling rock weighing around 270 kilograms. It's a reminder that in a situation like this, the risk is spread across everyone. The rescue team is working in the same cave, under the same ceilings. The patient in the stretcher has almost no ability to control anything. The man who spent years teaching underground evacuation technique is now strapped down, watching the gallery ceiling drift past above him, meter by meter. On the 10th of September, at 7 in the evening, Central European time, the stretcher reaches the bivouac at the 500-meter mark. The status report that day describes the patient's condition in one word: stable. Half the distance covered in a little over a day. The road was not a smooth one. Midway through the extraction, Dickey's condition worsened, and the command post had to make decisions on the fly: where to stop, how long to wait, whether to risk pushing the pace. One of the people on the operation later summed up the logic of those days bluntly. In his words, it was far harder than the German operation 9 years earlier, and they had to hurry because there was a real danger of losing him. On the 11th of September, the stretcher is raised to the 300-meter mark, then to the last intermediate camp at 180 meters. The upper sections go faster, the shafts here are shorter, there are fewer squeezes, and after a week of work, the route is fully rigged with ropes and pulleys. The mood changes too. On the lower stages, the rescuers worked in isolation, knowing only their own segment. Closer to the surface, sounds from above start reaching them, and the countdown from the command post comes down the cable. Fresh crews wait at the ready up top. At the entrance, in these hours, stand relatives, colleagues, and journalists. Dickey's family follows the updates from New York. Jessica Van Ord, the one who raised the alarm 9 days earlier, is back on the surface beside the cave. Over those same hours, something else becomes clear. An operation of this scale and this depth had never been completed successfully in the history of cave rescue. Everyone working the route understands that. One leg remains 180 meters to the entrance, a vertical ladder of shafts leading out. The stretcher emerges from the cave's final exit at 37 minutes past midnight on the 12th of September, local time. 9 days have passed since the attack. Rescuers and medics meet Dickey. He's conscious and talking. The first thing he says on the surface sounds almost ordinary. It's amazing to be back above ground. He's transferred and flown by helicopter to the city hospital in Mersin. At the hospital, he's walking around and giving short interviews, looking composed. Doctors continue running tests in those days to establish the cause of the bleeding. Later, publications point to an ulcer linked to a bacterial stomach infection and the strain on his body. At the time of the events, no official diagnosis was announced. Specialists were quick to assess the result. Morca became the deepest successful cave rescue in history. The previous benchmark was Germany's Widened. In 2014, a casualty was brought up from 950 meters there, a job that took 11 days and around 700 people. Here the depth was greater and the timeline shorter. The medical side of the operation drew particular attention. A blood transfusion at 1,040 meters is a one-off in world practice, both for its volume and for the depth. Some of the discrepancies simply stayed discrepancies. Different sources put the number of participants anywhere from 150 to 200, the number of countries from 7 to 9, and they disagree on the volume of blood transfused and on the depth where the attack began. A few weeks after his discharge, Dickey said he intended to go back to caving. The way he put it, caving itself isn't a dangerous sport, but it takes place in a dangerous location. He survived, and along with him, survived an operation that rescue services across Europe have been studying ever since.